Leadership. We sure do need leaders today. Things have gotten so confused and so murky in our society. It really has become a mixed up culture. Some people, they just don't know what's up, what's down, what's right, what's left. There's so much confusion, and we need people to lead. We need people to lead in the Christian church. We need people to lead in the business world, people to lead in sporting teams, people to lead in schools. We need people who are followers of Jesus to really step up and actually lead. And we have, of course, some tremendous examples of leadership in the Bible. It is just packed full of so many great examples of leaders. And let's just consider one, and that is Gideon, because Gideon had an assignment. God wanted him to take on the Midianites and then whittled his army down to only 300 men. So that was quite a challenge. It was a great test of his faith. But this is the assignment that God gave to Gideon. And Gideon, after he was emboldened by hearing a dream, he says to his men, and this is really classic leadership, he says, "Arise, for the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand." So Gideon just calls on his men to get moving, to arise, and he's not passive. He's not just waiting for something to happen. He doesn't suggest a few things. He actually tells them to arise. And then just in the next couple of verses, tremendous leadership here. He says to them, "Look at me and do likewise." Isn't that classic leadership? Look at me and do likewise. It's reminiscent of Jesus washing the disciples' feet and then telling them that he'd set an example and he wanted them to do as he had done for them. And he says, "When I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do." Again, this is Gideon. He's not behind. He's not pushing the men into the battle while he is in a safe position. He leads from the front and he wants them to follow his example. So he does that. He smashes his clay pot. He holds up his torch. He blows his trumpet, and the rest follow him. And of course, the rest is history. They won a tremendous victory with a very small army. A great example of leadership. Now, someone might say today, "Oh, I'm just too humble to lead that way. I can't call people to follow me. I'll just always point people to the Lord." And it can sound kind of pious, but let's not forget Paul's example. Consider what Paul said to the Philippians. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 9, he said, "What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things." So Paul wasn't shy about calling people to follow his example. He's not claiming to be perfect. He's not being arrogant, but he had lived a certain kind of life before the Philippians, and he is calling them to do as he did, to follow his example. We find a similar thing in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." So that's the kind of leadership we need today. And now some might say, "Well, God hasn't called me to high-level leadership and so on." And God obviously does call some people to lead hundreds, thousands of people. But let's think about it, because really every husband watching this, you are a leader. You are meant to be providing leadership in your marriage, not being passive, not waiting for things to happen, but leading, lovingly leading your wife. Every man, every father watching this is meant to lead his children. Not being a couch potato, not us men sort of sitting on the lounge with a remote, flicking through the stations, or always out in the shed out the back doing up an old car, and no time for the children, no time to teach them the Word of God, no time to spend time together and lead by example in that way. So we need to lead. Every mother watching this is a leader, and you have a tremendous privilege and responsibility to provide leadership to your children. And then some of us, God puts us in multiple leadership roles in the marriage, in the home, in the church, in a sporting team, in the corporate world, in a school. Oh, there are so many areas where we really need followers of Jesus to step up and actually lead. Not waiting for things to happen, but actually leading and setting an example in a lost and dying world, setting an example to younger Christians that they can look up to someone and follow a godly, consistent example. May God help us to take up the challenge that we find in the Bible of providing true leadership, all the while with our eyes fixed on Jesus Christ.